PNC, America's Black News Channel. Watch us on all major cable providers and major streaming platforms. Finally, news that speaks to us.
The highly polarized culture wars continue at school board meetings across the country. Recently, a Virginia parent blamed school closures, mask mandates, and critical race theory as contributing factors in her son's tragic suicide. Earlier this month, Cindy Walsh, the mother of a 2020 graduate, gave an emotional speech at the monthly school board meeting in Fairfax.
My son, Robert, took his life because he thought that all of the oppression was his fault. There were times he felt excluded because he had to use electives for speech therapy. His expressive language would be even worse while wearing a mask. You need to be inclusive to every student. Be inclusive to those who have special needs or not. Be inclusive to those who are masked or unmasked, vaccinated or unvaccinated. Every race, every life, every student matters. No one wants you to stop teaching Black history, but please do not do it in a way that makes his life worth any less.
The far-right Breitbart and the conservative Daily Wire both picked up on the story, amplifying Walsh's blames against COVID mandates and the teaching of CRT. The Daily Wire quoted an anti-CRT parent calling the school board members sociopaths, whom the site described as staring blankly as grieving mom talks about son's suicide. In response, research and writing fellow at the African American Policy Forum, Samuel Hoadley-Brill, took to Twitter, fact-checking Walsh's accusations, saying, quote, "I verified that her son, Robert Walsh, took his own life in June 2021. But I noticed something in his obituary. Robert graduated in 2020. He finished high school online, never experienced mask vaccine mandates, no evidence of CRT lessons at his school." Sam joins me now. Samuel Hoadley-Brill is the Research and Writing Fellow at the African American Policy Forum. Welcome to the show. So what did you find out when you did this digging? This is fascinating.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. I found a couple of very concerning things. First of all was that I didn't see anybody pushing back against the narrative that was being presented on Breitbart, as it was the first publication to break the story. Nobody was pushing back, and it was based around this video posted by the Fairfax County Parents Association that you just showed. And the responses were full of outrage. You know, people were saying, look, this is what happens. This is what happens when Democrats control the school boards. They're leading children to suicide. And I just looked into it a little bit more, and what I found was that, well, you know, this student had actually been already past graduation for a full year before he tragically took his own life. So I don't see how that had anything to do with the policies of the school, and also any connection to COVID restrictions or you know, safety protocols is spurious, because you know, the only one that he ever encountered was distance learning. So there could have been some isolation, but unfortunately there's nothing that the school board could have done about it at that point.
So then I have to wonder how this plays out, right? I understand far right-wing spin. You know, the left, the right, people spin stuff. Journalists spin stuff, bloggers, tweeters, Twitterers, whatever you call them, spin stuff. But the idea that a parent who lost their child would make these declarations in full public view, if they're not true, seems a bit curious to me. I find that also hard to believe. So help me understand why a parent, you think, would shift the blame towards schools and CRT and masking if the kid was home and didn't experience these things.
Well, yeah, this is where the story gets even darker, in my opinion. I really did not feel good uncovering these things, but I felt I did have to expose them because, you know, the truth needs to be out there. So the mother, you know, who was speaking at the school board meeting, she was quoted in another article from January of this year, and it mentioned that she was the author of a book called Breaking the Autism Code. She mentions that her son, who died by suicide, was diagnosed with autism. And so I did some searching, and I found an interview where she was on a radio program called Angel Talk Radio, And sure enough, about 10 minutes into the interview, she claims that her sons had both developed autism due to their vaccinations in early childhood. So it seems that her book is pushing the, pseudoscientific conspiracy theory that vaccines are the cause of autism. She also is elsewhere characterizing autism as, a national emergency that needs to be cured. And so it seems that, this is, of course, any way of explaining her behavior is going to be speculative, and I do not claim to really know the, ultimate motivations that moved her to give this speech. But it seems to me that, it had to have been in her mind due to these kind of evil forces that push, COVID vaccines and other sorts of vaccines to, to ultimately lead children into despair.